myself out.
I am afraid of...
I'm terrified and paralyzed by...
I am deathly afraid of...
Welcome to the Sum of All Fears podcast with your host, me, Ryan Perrio. Hello and welcome to the Sum of All Fears podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Perrio. This week, my guest is comedian and personal trainer Shahyan Jahani. Shahyan is a local comic here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area who's starting to make waves in other cities as well as more clubs in this scene. He also is a fitness professional who majored in kinesiology and has always had a fascination with the human body. And it was a fun conversation. We recorded this back when we were both working with Liz Mealy in September. And we just decided to do an episode before the show. It was a real fun interview. We talked a lot about comedy. We shared our past about DWIs, as Shahyan has a couple and I have one of my own. And then we get into his fear of disappointing the people that he cares about, which I really resonate with as somebody who's come up short and felt that burden, at least for, a period in my life. I felt like I always was a disappointment, and it's something a lot of us struggle with, and I feel it's a good conversation. So let's get into my interview with Shahyan Jahani. All right, my guest this week is fitness professional, comedian, and I don't know what else you do at this.
I think that's mostly it. I am either working out or writing, usually.
So I'm always curious. So how did you get into fitness?
Man, honestly, I was a kines major, so I did like that. That was like what I went to school for. And then it was with the intention of wanting to go into PT school, which is, again, going to be kind of where we jump off into some of this disappointment stuff. But like I wanted to go to PT school, but I did not have the grades for it at all. Like I was not competitive. I couldn't even I looked at schools that were like overseas and in the Caribbean, and they were still like, nah, dude. Yeah, I couldn't, it's a very high standard to become a physical therapist.
That's amazing. It's basically, you could have got at university. You're the only person that's been rejected by University of Phoenix.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. I literally looked at a Caribbean medical school for not only like an MD or a PA, physician assistant, or PT, and all three, like my GPA was just south of what they wanted. And that was like school in the Caribbean. Like that, they don't have rules really.
That's where you can go to get medicine, bootleg medicine.
Yeah, that's where you go to get your like your plastic surgery done for like $200.
So that's interesting. So you've always been, like, I guess, fascinated by kinesiology and the physical body.
Yeah, dude. So I always enjoyed it, and actually, for how like robust A&M's like fitness facilities were, I seldom went to them because I was just too busy like doing drugs and drinking in college. But like also being a kines major and like handling that side too. And I didn't really get back into it until several years after college, and then doing other jobs, working other careers and stuff like that. And then I'm literally 15 years later, it's come back full circle, and it's how I make, it's like my bread and butter. And then comedy and acting and all that stuff is just kind of like the supplement. So
that's how I kind of treat my job too, is like when the pandemic hit, I'm like, boy, am I glad that I didn't decide to go like full-time just comedy. Cause my biggest fear with comedy is, say I do good enough that everybody books me, but not good enough that it's like for like continuous. Like, so like 1 year I'll do all these clubs and make all this money, and then the next year they're like, sorry, we're not going to have you back. And it's just like, yeah,
exactly.
It just becomes scorched earth as far as, and then you have to go back and try to find a job, and with no college degree and in my 40s, I'm like, there's no chance. Like I have no chance to do all in, because I just have lived too long to know the downside of if everything doesn't work out. Like I am vaguely
something that.
But yeah, I just see all the downside of it, and knowing how hard it was to get where I'm at and just how lucky I am to have it, that I'm just not willing to throw it away.
Yeah. That's a safe bet. Also, were you thinking about doing that? Were you thinking about just being like,
oh yeah,
see you later job? Yeah.
And
how many times have you thought about doing that? Because I mean, you've been at comedy for a while. So have there been like peaks where you're just like, I think I can do this and like sustain, my standard of living?
Well, 2006 is when I started comedy, and the goal was in 2 years be good enough at comedy that I can quit my job, because my job, I was working like a temp job. I was working temp jobs. I had to move home with my parents, and I was living with my mom. And then 2006, 2007, I lost my job, my temp job at one place, and got a second one, and it was a 2-year contract with the company that I work for now. So I was like, I got 2 years, 2008, I've got 2 years to make comedy work. And so from 2008,
you gave yourself like a finite.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I was just afraid, because I was like, I don't know where I'm going to get my next job. I don't know if my next job's going to allow me the work hours to do comedy. And so I went to every single open mic, every single show, everything I could possibly do. Like I would do 3 to 4 open mics a night. Like my record's still 6, and I would just work myself to exhaustion.
Wait, what?
That was a Thursday.
What year? That was a Thursday. So what? This was what year?
About 2009, because I had just wrecked my car.
Yeah, okay.
And so I was like 2009, and I was like going to they had an opening bell at 7:00, and I would do backdoor open mic. Then we had a open mic in Frisco, at a bar in Frisco. Then they had an open mic on a bar in Arlington. And then they had a bar in Fort Worth. And then I ended the night at Fort Worth Hyenas.
Jesus, dude, was your last spot like at 1:00 in the morning?
It was close to 12:31, but it was at Hyenas Fort Worth, and I lived in the HEB area. So I was like, well, it's like 15, 20-minute drive back home. But it started in the south side of Dallas, then up 75, then all the way up to Frisco, then down to Arlington.
Frisco, yeah. You literally drove the worst. Those are the longest hauls in the world. And honestly, I don't know what you think. Going north and south isn't too bad, but going east to west in the Metroplex is just a freaking beating. Can we say this? Can we say swear words on this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fucking beating to go east to west.
And that's one thing I still almost outwork a lot of comics, because I will go to open mics and across towns, and I'll do 2 in one night. I will, Tuesday I did 3. I did a Funky Picnic in Fort Worth. Then it's just down the street, there's a bar called the Low Key Tavern. I did that. And then in Hearst, there's the Wounded Duck that starts late. And so I was like, okay, I'll just do all 3 of these.
Is Wounded Duck good? Do you like that one?
It was all right. There was 10 to 15 people, but they're not. The stage faces a pool hall, which I don't understand, because the bar is just stage left. Like all the bar and all the seating is stage left, and then there's a little bit of seating in front, but then it's all pool tables in the back.
And there's people playing. There's nothing worse than going up when people are just like breaking.
They all stopped, but it was a fun mic. Funky Picnics on Tuesdays is by far right now my favorite, since Comedy Arena, I guess, moved to Thursday.
Yeah. Is Comedy Arena's pretty good too?
It's all comics for the most part, unfortunately, just because it's hard. There's not much, I guess, foot traffic in downtown McKinney except Friday and Saturday. Mm-hmm. But it's not a bad mic. Like, I did it because you got 2 4-minute sets in one night. You got to go up twice. And so that's
nice. Yeah.
So I was just, I do kind of do it by cumulative stage time, because I've learned in my experience that there is more, I can do more with stage time than just get laughs. There's things that I need to work on, like, can I pronounce this? Where's my act outs at? Where, I feel more free to do act outs in an empty room than I do like a full room. That makes sense. Like, I just feel more, I guess it maybe also is, like, I tell people that go late, I'm like, that's a gift. because going late and just getting used to a quiet room and being comfortable with it being quiet is such a skill that you can utilize as a comic later on because you're not nervous when things don't work.
Yeah. It's like conditioning through and through. I mean, you condition yourself to the hard stuff. That way, when you actually experience it in game time, it doesn't really. It's like second nature to you. Also, I find myself likening things in comedy to things in athletics, and things in athletics to things in comedy all the time. Like I was parallel to.
When I was in breakdancing, that's kind of how I got the work ethic for comedy, is because like
you did break. Well, hold on, back up. You did breakdancing.
Yeah, like in the early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, and stuff like that.
Please bring this back, Perio. Please do this.
That's why I could do that Chuck E. Cheese bit so well, is because it's from all the old dancing experience and stuff to be able to.
It's all the popping and locking.
Yeah, it really is. It's just. It was going to those like hangouts and just working on watching those people work at breakdancing. I mean, the hours that the people that taught me would spend like doing things like to do an air chair and stuff like that. Like they said they would watch movies and they would just lean back during the movie, at home, like watching home movies on the floor. They would sit there and lean back and just get used to, because it's all breakdancing is all just, kind of supporting your body with other body parts. Like when you like stand on your side air chair, basically you're using your arm and you brace it against your side here, and like it's a center of balance thing, and you just hold yourself up.
Yeah, it's all about weight distribution.
Yeah. And so you just learn how to do that and condition your body to support you, and find that, so that when you're in breakdance competition or just at a club or something, you don't do that and mess yourself up. But I mean,
gotta warm up before.
But as a kinesiology major, I'm sure it would be fascinating for you to go to a class and just kind of learn like little like ways that they just to support themselves in weird positions and stuff to be able to hold their body.
Yeah, that's like it's kind of Pilates-ish. Like it's almost like just holding static poses that are, and you're doing like small pulsing movements and stuff like that. I am not above any, like I will take a dancing class. I love dancing. Hip hop classes have been fun in the past. I haven't frequently done them just because of time, but I would never say no to something like that. I also would say there's very few styles of exercise that if someone, I've even taken like an introductory, I got like a Groupon for a parkour lesson. It was like semi-private parkour. That shit was fun, dude. Like you just learn there. I learned how to like land gracefully and use my legs like springs and how to not land. So like that lends itself to success when you're doing a little bit more like plyometric or like jumpy stuff when you're doing any kind of training or something like that. You can kind of teach people how to land correctly and not jar their knees and do all that kind of stuff. So it's really beneficial. It's it's multidisciplinary dancing is.
That's awesome. I was dancing at clubs, and then like my friends were some of my friends were in breakdancing, and they told us, me and my friends, about a breakdancing class, and so we took it, and my friends both bowed out like after 2 classes, and I kept going. I just kept going, and I would go to them like to gymnastics things where they would do, and I would goof around there too. Like there'd be trampolines, and I'm sorry, I would just be like, I can go bounce. I'm going to go bounce for a while, like a trampoline park. It was just fun.
Have you been to a trampoline park?
No.
Have you been to one recently, like a proper one? Yeah,
no,
they're fun, dude.
But it was like a gym down on the other side of town, and I lived in HEB, so I would drive all the way, or Carrollton, so I would drive all the way, almost past the village to this little gymnastics gym, like a rec center, a gymnastics, and we would all hang out and do breakdance moves and stuff like that, and I just learned how much work, that there's no, even though if you're naturally gifted, there's a lot of work involved, and you had to constantly practice, and that kind of helped me like to go to open mics. Like, okay, these are all practice sessions. I had to get every practice session I could get. I didn't care about how good they were. I care sometimes now. Like if it's at some point, I'm like, okay, this is, not as beneficial as other open mics. And I've learned to separate myself, because there were years like from 2010 to 2012 is all a blur to me. Because I would literally go up every night of the week. Sunday through Saturday. Like, because I would do weekends at...
Backdoor. I was going to say, did you think that was that hurting you more than it was helping? Or were you still in that phase where it was like the practice was beneficial? Because I do think you reach a point of diminishing returns when when you're spending every night.
I would say it helped me with stage presence and just stand up, but it hurt me in writing. Because I never cultivated new experiences or anything to write about, because I would always be constantly working on stuff, because I've still got a backlog from the past. Like I'm doing jokes right now that I wrote back in 2016. Like I think I'm at 2016, so I'm like 5 years behind, because I just can't. I have a discipline that I can't just play with everything that I write now. Like I can't be like, okay, new joke and everything else doesn't matter. I have to try to work through everything that I've written, because everything I think deserves an opportunity.
Sure. Yeah, at least got to take a crack.
Yeah, I don't want it to sit in my notebook and never be looked at again. So I'll go through old notebooks. Like when I start a new notebook, I'll have an old notebook where I just read what I wrote and try to make something new out of it. Some of it's like, what was this?
What was I thinking? Yeah, that's kind of like you're like what we were texting about earlier, where I was saying like you don't want to die with stuff still in you, and you want to at least give it an honest try and give the jokes like their time on stage to see like if they can go anywhere. But I completely agree with you. That's like one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to people at open mics, newer people and older, who are just struggling or in a slump. I'm like, hey, this is probably like a really weird and not idea that you'd be thinking of, but why don't you stop going to open mics for like 2 weeks and just like go shoot the shit and do stuff and go hang out with old friends who are not comedians, like comedy adjacent friends that, you know, are maybe from high school or whatever. Because you need to be experiencing stuff. You need to be living stuff so you have something to talk about. You can't just spend every night at an open mic and expect to have new experiences. Now, some things might happen at an open mic, or you might cut up with some friends and recall an old story and they're like, that's a bit, there's value in that too. But like I was saying, I think there comes a point where if you're blocked up enough, like if you just have that much of a writer's block, you need to kind of shake it up. Like you need to go see some movies, go read a book that's different than what you normally have, and see what you can find.
Yeah. And that's what I try to do, that and try to live outside my world. Cause I'm slightly, I would say, on the spectrum somewhere, because I have a set routine. So everything I do is almost like clockwork. And it just kind of keeps me sane, because I'm like, I don't have any ideas of doing anything other than what I feel I'm supposed to be doing. Like today's grocery shopping day. At some point I've got to go grocery shopping and do chores and things of that nature. And so it kind of keeps...
So you live on a routine.
Yes. That routine is certain open mics, certain days. And then I'll change it sometimes, and I'm like, okay, let's do this and shake it up, just to kind of give me an idea of, and just look around how other comics are doing and stuff, and just kind of keep low-key tabs. Like I don't want to micromanage, and I don't want to try to watch everybody every day to try to see the microcosm that they've grown, because it's such a small scale. I want to give it time, so that the next time I see you, it's not just gradual, it's super noticeable. It's like, oh my God, like how much better has this person gotten?
Yeah.
Like Arun was like that for me. Arun was, when I first started, he was fast paced. He had a lot of words that I felt he didn't have to say. And I would just listen to him every so often, and I would, hear those words every once in a while. I'm like, okay, he's still working on it. And then, a couple of times later, I was like, okay, he seems like he's gotten rid of those, I guess, filler words. And I tried to explain it, that to a booker, it just sounds like you're putting and or in every sentence to make sure you hit that 1,500 word essay.
Yeah. You're trying to fill the space with something.
Yeah.
So.
And because he thought it was relatable. He's like, I'm trying to relate. And I'm like, but you don't have to say that specifically. Are you relating to this? Just assume they are.
Yeah. That's some solid advice that I've gotten for a lot of people. Also, not asking questions so much, and I'm guilty of this often, but I definitely try when I'm thinking about it, and I'm not like too in my head and not, thinking of all my steps, polling the room first, like being like, hey, does anybody in here blah, and then like you go into a bit about it. Just go into the bit about it. If they're on board with you, they're on board with you. You don't need to. It shows a lack of confidence, I think. I can't remember who told me this. It might actually be Willie Lee Martin, who I'm opening for next week, but I think he said, don't poll the room because it shows a lack of confidence in the premise. If you've tested it and it's something that you've done before, just assume the fact that there are some people who have either been in this situation or it's relatable enough to where they can go with you on the joke. It's fine.
Yeah. I usually just state what my emotion is in a lot of stuff because I want them to feel they agree or disagree. If I make it ambiguous of my feelings and I'm giving them, I guess, all the information to feel anything, and then it starts to, you'll see, like, that's why some jokes are good but they don't hit, because you're giving them license to say, well, what do I feel about traffic? If you say, you've been stuck in traffic, instead of I hate being stuck in traffic, now you've immediately given them a position to be, I hate being stuck in traffic too.
Yeah, that's something to agree with you on.
Yeah, it's a yes or no versus being stuck in traffic. And how do I feel about being stuck in traffic? People all of a sudden are in their own head, even subconsciously. They don't realize it, but you've given them like a minute to process. And I was like, you can already set them up so that you can have the big reveal by making them feel one way or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. You just need to go into the topic. There's no preface that really needs to be had. And linking it to an emotion is probably like the biggest piece of advice. It's the people who just go up and talk like talking heads and just start saying shit without really, and I think that there's a gradation to this. I think you can have like, it's got to be a strong emotion because there's got to be a reason you're talking about it in front of X number of people on stage. You can't just be like, online dating is tough, or like, it's a little difficult sometimes. No, people are going to be like, okay, then I don't care about what you have to say because it's clearly not bothering you enough. But if you go like, I want to hang myself every time I open Tinder, that's like a strong emotion. Like people are like, oh, this man really hates online dating. I'm just using that comparison because it's just beaten to a pulp out there. So, I'm always interested to hear new takes on old shit.
Well, yeah, and what I've realized by listening to old specials is that everything's still the same. People, it's not different. On the 70s, it was blind dating. In the 80s, it was video dating.
Oh, what? Video dating? Weird.
Yeah. You made a video cassette.
sending tapes. Yeah.
And then in the 90s, it was, online dating. And now it's Tinder. It's still the same. It's still the same thing. I'm doing this with the expectation of meeting somebody, but it's the dumbest thing. Like I don't understand the instant gratification of somebody else matched with me.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, every girl has like 18 matches, like as soon as they open it up.
Yeah.
And so they're just being selective with who's already said yes to them.
Yeah. Which is really just, we know the drill. Most guys are just like, right. It doesn't like there's no discretion on it at all. I actually did.
What's one you've done that you, now that you're
an online dating?
Yeah.
So I like Tinder and Bumble. So Katie and I met before ones even like Hinge and stuff were out. So like OkCupid was around. I think Match.com was just going to an app, and then there were like really dumb, like Tinder and Bumble were like kind of the juggernauts, and then there were other little ones like Coffee Meets Bagel and like all those like really dumb small ones that like I think they were just flashes in the pan, or maybe they got bought up by like bigger ones or something like that. So Tinder and Bumble were fine. I met a couple of girls on each of those respective platforms. None of them were really terrible dates. Some I kind of knew a couple dates in that it wasn't going to click, but we were maybe still having fun. And then Katie and I started talking, and we were like talking, but not really dating because we were just like, we don't want to date a comic. So we were both kind of like doing our own thing too. And then we both popped up on each other's dating apps and just like ironically matched texted there as like a bit just to be funny. We knew each other and we would talk, and then eventually we just started hanging out more and hanging out more. Yeah.
Let's see how far this bit
just
goes.
Kind of sprouted from there. Yeah, dude. So the thing that honestly like kicked the bucket over was she and I went together to a speed dating thing with the intention of dating, like genuinely going to a speed dating thing and seeing what it was all about. Because neither of us had done it. We were both like comedy friends. We were kind of running in the same crew, but we weren't like, we had an eye for each other, but we weren't really, we liked hanging out, but we were both still like, this is probably a bad idea. We got to the speed dating thing. It was like 40 dudes and like 3 very frightened looking women. Katie and I walked up the stairs. It was a bar in Uptown. I don't remember which one. We walked upstairs, looked around, both mutually turned to each other and goes, yo, this sucks ass. And we left, sat down at the bar downstairs, drank, hung out. And I think that's kind of where we started to kind of realize that maybe we were clicking more than we ever would with anyone on the speed dating side of things. So we started hanging out more after that.
So you're also someone that's, I guess, seeing another comic. What is that like? I think it's easy. But I think you also have to care enough about the person other than your own career at the same time. Like you have to be okay with whatever they do and not put your nose in their comedy, I would say. Yeah.
I've told her 1,000 times that nothing is off the table. I was like, if I do something like, mortifying and embarrassing, and you want to take it to the stage, it's fair game. Honestly, I gotta have thick enough skin to deal with it. Now, if it's something that's like, if it's something that could, potentially damage, like people's respect of me, or if it was something that like, I think she would naturally not do something like that. And I can't really think of a really good example there. Anything embarrassing or, bathroom or sexual or whatever, all that stuff's on the table. I don't care. We're human. Like we all do weird, dumb, embarrassing stuff. And I don't care if she goes on stage and talks about it. And she's kind of the same way. I don't really go in too much on her outside of just like a lot of the more recent, like trying for kid stuff and all that kind of stuff, which is fun in and of itself. And she's got her take on it. And the fun thing is like, when we're both on a show, we both have 2 different views on it. Of where we're both coming from, kind of in that realm. But like, I don't tell her to censor herself on anything. We both understand each other. I'm sure that like if a gig pops up or if you have a show that would be beneficial for you to do because it's something you're trying to get your foot in the door at a club or something like that, and we have a date night planned or something, it's really convenient to date a comic because they understand. Like they would be like, you know what? Yeah, that's, go do that and Friends show or go do that spot over there because I know you've been trying to get your foot in the door at Addison Improv or wherever. And because, they're trying to do the same thing. And conversely, like we kind of like boost each other up. I think Katie enjoys doing stand-up enough. And I think she's going to continue to do it, in whatever capacity she chooses to. I think for me, it's like, I'm really trying to like hammer, get better. I'm talking to, local and headliners who come in, offering, if you're ever down in the Southeast region and you need an opener or something like that, I'm trying to be a little bit more, make it some sort of a revenue stream for me, but it's not all about the money, but getting more serious about it basically. Yeah. I think once you start getting paid for gigs and, you start establishing yourself as like, a professional comedian, I think it becomes a job and it's something that you need to take seriously and you need to put, marketing dollars behind it, and you need to be marketing yourself and refining your there's a lot that goes into it, as as someone who's been doing it for several years.
Yeah.
So
it's one of those things that I'm like I'm having a hard time like realizing. It's like I need to do TikTok. I need to do stuff that's not, because it's not as much stand-up video as what people are telling me now is like they want to see like the parody, the tender lip sync of it, or living it or acting it out versus the stand-up clip. And so I'm like,
I don't know, man.
I've got to do it that way.
Well, I mean, what do you think? Like all these social media apps just kind of come and go. So like you get good at TikTok. Okay, cool. You get a following. And then there's going to be another app that's going to take the next generation by storm. And then it's going to be another platform. Like I see this with older, like maybe you're probably about 5 or 6 years older than me. So like comics that are about 10 years my senior, they were just absolutely mind fucked about having to like get good at Instagram. And, Facebook was first and Twitter, you had to be a good Twitter comic. And then Instagram was like, now I got to learn this platform. And now I see some of these people like, okay, TikTok now, like we got to get on TikTok collectively. Okay, cool. Let's do this thing now. I think they come and go. And I think it's important because there's nothing there's no easier way to get yourself in front of potentially hundreds of thousands of millions of people. So I recognize the value, but there's also just a part of me that just hates social media so much.
But it's just one of those things where I like being able to control the environment like I can in stand up. I just hate, I don't like being, I'd say almost like center stage. That was one of the things that held me back in breakdancing, is that I wasn't the breakdancer that would, jump out in the middle of a circle or anything. I would stand in the back and cheer on and, like, ooh, that was really tough.
Yeah.
But I would never be that guy that like hunted for the spotlight until I got to stand up. And I'm like, now I'm, like scrappy. I'm like, let me at them. Like any crowd, I'm like, just put me up there.
Yeah.
Put me in coach. And I just have a fun time with it. And I see the benefit now because of where I'm at in stand up, like that I'm a decent to fairly good comic. And I'm like, huh, I've just got to, I need to put that out on display, otherwise, my, I guess, map will be very limited, and it's hard to get, I guess, further out into other clubs and everything else. It's like, I'm learning, trying to get my foot in the door at all various clubs across the country, and just, it's like, you might not know me, but here's what I do.
Exactly. And sometimes even a video can't do that justice, because like, honestly, as someone who has booked and had, I'm sure you've experienced the same with people sending you kind of like unsolicited videos. I'm just like if you can't get me in the first 30 seconds of the video, it better be a banger up front, because I won't stay with it. And I also would know when people would send me like 10-minute clips on Google Drive or on Dropbox, I'd be like, motherfucker, like, no, I'm not watching a 10-minute set of yours unless it's really captivating, or if it's someone who, I've maybe heard about their reputation precedes the video or something like that. Like, it's like, okay, cool, I've never seen this person, so I'm glad they sent me this video. We were looking to have them come through at DCH or something back in the day. But that was kind of like, you have to have this kind of stuff on the ready. And I think social media kind of facilitates that, but it's also about like having a lot of the stuff you have, like a business card, a good EPK, all that kind of stuff that you can put out to those clubs to hopefully get you in the door. So,
yeah. So when did you start stand up? Like, what got you into stand up?
So my origin story is 7 years ago. I had always wanted to do it. I'd never like sacked up and did it. And then this was back, I can't remember if it was my first or second DUI, but it was one of them. And my license was suspended, and I was taking the bus everywhere. So I worked downtown, and I lived all the way up in North Dallas, like at like Martian, Frankfurt or something. Mm-hmm. So I took buses and trains everywhere. And one day leaving work, it was a particularly bad day at work. It was a Tuesday. It was a beating, and I just wasn't paying attention. And I literally got on a bus that had it was like a 61 versus 62 type situation. I got on the wrong bus that didn't take me to the train station, but it went down to Deep Elm. And once I noticed, it didn't take but a couple stops for me to be like, oh, fuck, this is going the wrong way. And then it dropped off right at the corner of Good Latimer and Elm, like right there by the 7-Eleven. And I just got off the bus, and I was going to regroup, find another bus. It was late, or I was going to have to Uber home. I was broke, so I didn't want to do that one. I had to get to a train station quick. And then I saw Dallas Comedy House was down the road. And I was like, oh, shit, I'd been Googling around, and like I knew when the open mics were, but I never even had the courage to even go watch one. Mm-hmm. But I had just put myself in the situation. I had come off the bus. I saw it there. I was like, I know that open mic happens tonight. It was about 7:30. So I just went and watched. And that's when they changed the sign up system from sign up, show up, go up to email. And I jotted down the email. I was like, maybe I'll use this later. And I just wrote it down in my work notebook. And then that next day at work, I like stared at it and ruminated. And I submitted, and I didn't get on the list for like 4 tries. I just kept trying. I don't know why. Like it was one of those things that for me was a lot like snowboarding. The first time I saw snowboarding, I was like, that shit's cool. I want to do that. I strapped boots on and went, and I sucked for like 4 years consecutively. And I was like, I will get good at this. So it was kind of like I got denied the first few times, and I was just like, no. I'm at least going to try this once. And then finally, 4 or 5 tries later, I got on the list, went dead last, actually had a decent set of like really, really old green stuff that I probably have not touched in years. And the rest is history. I never stopped doing it after that. I did DCH like consistently for a while. And then I started to kind of go to the other ones that I was hearing about. Hyenas next. Got bumped off that list, Lord knows how many times, by Butch. I was sitting in the last block, and I was one of those, like, it waited until 2 a.m. and then the last 2 blocks wouldn't be able to go. And then Butch would be like, I'm gonna write all your names down and you're gonna go on the first block next week. And then he would lose that sheet of paper. And then we'd be right the fuck back in the last block. That happened, no joke, Perio. That happened 3 weeks in a row for me. So there were 3 weeks I was at Hyenas signing up at 5:30. My license was suspended, so I couldn't go home. I stayed in Mockingbird Station until 2 a.m., didn't get to go up, then had to Uber home, and then do the same goddamn thing the following week 3 times in a row. So yeah, that's great.
So you mentioned Dallas Comedy House. How do you think Dallas Comedy House, like that, I guess, because it's more of an improv, like there's more of an improv and there's more of a, I would say, improv kind of support system to everything that they do, or stand up and stuff, that it's very much it's a cultivated, I would say, environment that they cultivate like-minded people that want to do comedy in some form or fashion. It's not just improv or stand up, there's sketch, there's musical, it seemed like it's a very, I would say, it's a very close-knit group with a lot of different, I would say, styles of comedy. What was that like, I guess growing up in that environment versus just a regular open mic bars?
So, for me, it was almost not any different than starting out at any bar mic, because at the time it was DCH on Main Street. It was before they moved to the Elm. It was on Commerce.
Yeah.
And then they moved to Main, and then they moved to Elm. So I started at the Commerce location when they only had one room. So I think it was Tuesday night open mic, and then Wednesday night was the improv jam. So I was on, like, I knew they taught classes and I knew they did improv. I didn't really care to find out what that was all about. I was really more interested in stand-up. So I didn't see a lot of the improv, and it was all stand-ups there on Tuesdays. So it was almost kind of like a very controlled environment for stand-up. And it wasn't until like they started having the jams in the same facility on the same nights that I really kind of like saw more of that side. So for me, I always just saw it as a stand-up theater, and eventually kind of got more and more into it as I was able to learn more and more about the facility. They moved shortly thereafter, and I saw more and more as I went there. And it's good though, because I think being versatile and learning a lot of different styles can't do anything but sort of to benefit you. I mean, sketch writing will help you in writing jokes, because you can learn to punch things up. If you can learn to punch things up in a sketch, you can learn how to punch things up in a joke. Improv is great for thinking on your feet. You know all this stuff. I mean, musical improv isn't going to really do anything for you, but I mean, if you want to sing and do stand-up, that's fine. Maybe that helps. But I thought it was beneficial to be in a supportive environment like that. I know DCH was pretty warm with, like, being pretty welcoming and stuff like that. And I really I enjoyed the people who I met there. I think one of my first, like, I took the class at the Commerce location. I took the stand-up class that Lauren Davis and Paulos taught, and that's how I kind of got to be close with them. And then we just kind of became fast friends. And, from then on, just had more and more responsibility there, started running the mic and, all that kind of stuff there. But I enjoyed it. I don't know how much different it would be if I started at a place, say, like Hyenas, like just started doing the Wednesday mic there and like stayed on that for a while before I went out to other places or Backdoor. But, for all intents and purposes, I feel like I only saw it as a stand-up joint until I learned more about what DCH had to offer. And that wasn't until really they moved. So yeah, it was all.
As somebody that started like in one environment, grew with comics in one environment and then versus that environment, is sometimes the line between support and, I would say, like, it's one thing to support, but I felt sometimes that they were just too warm. I try to be as honest as possible, because I've learned from my position that trying to say it in the sweet, but it's going to be okay. But this is what I just learned, that people, I feel like if I'm just bluntly honest, yes, it may in the moment be ow, but if I give you time to mull it over, you'll see where I'm coming from. And like, I've given people hosting opportunities and stuff and they've come back and like, oh my God, you were so right. Like, because I will be like, you're not ready.
Yeah.
And it's hard for comics. You're all ego because you're doing it by yourself. It's all you. It's all you on stage. You're in front of everybody. You're the person with the ego that thinks that in a crowd of people, you should be the one center stage holding a microphone.
Yeah.
And so I get
it's
that.
a big responsibility.
Yeah. But I get that, that there is this ego, and when people basically say to your ego, you're not ready for this. There's a moment, there's a momentarily like, oh, you just don't know what you're talking about. Or, there's a defense mechanism for your ego to, dismiss what was just told you. What do they know?
Yeah.
Because I always see that with younger comics when you're still like trying to when you're going up on stage with this, like, this is it, this is my moment, then you're probably not ready because you're putting expectations of this going well on it instead of just being like, here's what it is and just going. And people would get so bent out of shape and stuff, and then after they would get a second chance or an opportunity, they'd be like, oh my God, I've told people that I've hosted, I was like, I've never seen anyone their first ever hosting opportunity get it right. There's nobody that there's so much headspace that you've got, and all you're thinking about is your material.
You're just a ball of nerves up there. I think I had shit written on my hand, and you were like, it was after, I think it was Dean Edwards. You go, don't ever write anything on your hand to me. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, because what was I doing other than like this? Like, it was all in the like little portion of my hand right here. Yeah. And I remember you told me not to do that. Second show, I wiped it all off and just went off the dome. And it got incrementally better as I got more and more comfortable. Now I just kind of know the topics. I have the blueprint. I have the jungle gym, and I can just get around from rung to rung however I want, and whatever feels natural. Like, so long as I'm keeping it tight and high energy, that's your responsibility as a host. Like, you get on, you tune the audience for comedy, you keep everyone in line. That's it. I mean, like, you're a vessel at that point. Like, you're moving the show along. So
yeah, like Scott Crisp is one of my favorite people, and like I booked him for something, or I booked him for like his first hosting opportunity. And he was just nervous, and I was like, first critique is, I'm not gonna fire you for one bad show. So, you don't go up there thinking like, I've got to have a great show. Basically, you're doing the whole weekend, regardless of what happens. Unless you just do something so outrageous or so negative that has
absolutely happened. Yeah.
And I'm like, you first of all, you belong up there. Okay, I'm not going. There's nothing that you can do right now that's going to. So just relax. Was basically all the advice. It's like, you're really good, and he's taken that, and he went to feature before I took over booking full time. But I was just like, you belong up there. Just relax. No one's gonna fire you for one bad show. Just relax, have fun with it. It's an opportunity. It's not the opportunity. And that's why I tell everybody, it's not the only opportunity you're gonna get with Hyenas or whatever. Just
not at all.
Yeah, you're going to get. There was some cheesy rom-com movie. It was I think it was called Buying the Cow, but he was talking about relationships and stuff. There's no everybody likes to think of love at first sight like it's a lightning, like it's this one lightning strike of boom, you're in love. Like there's this one, and it's just like this lightning bolt of emotion. He's like, it's really more like the rain. Like, it's not just one person, just pitter patter of opportunities, just off, just constantly a pitter patter of opportunities that pop up.
Yeah. You have bountiful opportunities to get something right, and it need not be like super stressful each individual. Like, you're going to fail at some point. This is all the way up the ladder. You're going to have bad sets as a feature. You're going to bomb as a headliner. Like, it's going to happen the whole time. So get used to occasional failure, but as you get better, it just those instances kind of become fewer and far between. So. Yeah,
and it's just, I've just learned to let things roll off. I guess thanks to comics that I've worked with at Hyenas and other people, other comics I've associated with that told me that what was they thought was wrong with me.
yeah, you got to be tough to do this. Like, yeah, there's no bones about it there. You got to be sure of yourself. You got to be okay with getting feedback. You're more than welcome to disagree or agree with the feedback. And it tends to be, it's less, hugs and kisses and pillow fights, and more like kind of wolves going after each other. Like we need to hold each other accountable when we have bad, like I fucking hate it when I absolutely eat shit on stage at a mic or at a show, and I come off stage and a newer comic who I know is just trying to make friends and be nice to everybody says nice set to me. Now I love when people, I actually prefer it when I do poorly and someone who I don't know, like a comic I don't know, was like, yeesh. I respect that because that's an honest reaction. But when someone who's, again, of no fault of their own, they're just trying to, be affable with everybody. They're just trying to be welcoming. And I get off stage after absolutely shitting down my leg and they say, nice set or great set. I'm just like, fuck you. No, it wasn't. Like, don't lie to me. I don't respect you for that reason.
Yeah. So since we're talking about that, we'll talk about your fears, since that's what this podcast is about.
Oh yeah, dude, I forgot all about that.
It gets that way. I'll talk with people, like different people. I've had people from Netflix and everything on here that I haven't released yet, and I'm just like fascinated by all the stuff. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, by the way, you also have a fear. You have a really.
Which one do you want to talk about?
The one we were talking about was like disappointing the people you love, which was very relatable. It's a very interesting fear because there are always some great stories involved with that kind of haunt you as you go through life. Like, it's just painful reminders of, if this happens, like, it's just kind of like, I can't think of one off it. Like, just basically me in school every year with my mom would probably be the one that I stick to the most, because she would attack. She would beat me, but then she would also, because that's how it was in the 80s. People, let's not sugarcoat it. We got beat with belts, and it's considered child abuse now, but that's what they were grown up with, and they just, carried the torch through.
Yeah, they're just doing what they knew.
But my mom would make it worse because she would say things like, you just don't care.
Yeah.
And it was...
Which wasn't true, right?
Well,
no, you wanted to do well.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I just didn't understand because of what was going on up here. Like, I had, there were just things that I just couldn't do well, and I just wasn't put in an environment to succeed. I was an only child left with my own devices, and if you're going to leave me alone to do everything, I'm probably not going to do the boring stuff. I'm going to do stuff that I enjoy.
Yeah, that captivates you.
Yeah, like I hate this phone sometimes because I'll be like, I'm going to be productive today. I'm going to look down at my phone and I'll look up again and half the day is gone. And I'm like, son of a...
Yeah. That's probably that's collectively everyone's problem. Man.
Yeah.
We're all just glued to shit.
But that was just me with everything. It was me with Hot Wheels as a little kid. It was me with Legos. It was me with everything... that I wanted to do, video games. It was me with everything except my homework. And I would just struggle with it because I wouldn't realize I needed homework until I would get into class the next day. And so I'm like panicking, and like I had a third grade teacher because she knew something was wrong. Because she went to my, I guess we didn't take stuff home, but we had our paperwork. We had a little cubby. And all of our work would be, we would put all our stuff in those cubbies and leave for the day. And everybody else's cubby was quasi-neat. And I just had every homework assignment she had ever given me stuffed in there.
Like, just didn't do any of them?
I had a ream of paper, basically, like just crumpled in there. Like, it took us 3 hours. I think she stayed with me after school and just pulled out all this paperwork, and it was like 3 hours of work that I never turned in.
Ish. Probably would have helped you in school.
Yeah, but she just, and it was just her not understanding what was wrong. Like, she knew something was wrong because I had all this. I've never done the work, but that's all sitting there, and like with no answer for why it wasn't done.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and I would just sit there and play with erasers and everything else that kids do.
Hot Wheels.
Yeah. well, not in school, not during class, because then they would taken up, but like you just play with your school supplies, then became Hot Wheels. And so,
yeah. Man.
And so that was a real struggle. And I just remember my mom just telling me all the time that I didn't care. And that would probably do that did more damage probably than like the beatings and stuff. Just to be terrified of failing and not knowing how to tell my parents, and then not knowing how to say why I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Just being told that over and over again, and so I'd say it just held me, to a basically like, yeah, I don't care, I guess. I don't, I just don't know what else to do. I don't, I'm trying to do better, but everything else, every distraction would grab my attention.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of, I'm not going to say necessarily, because I mean, some of it is on you. You could have done your homework and stuff like that, but like you didn't know what you didn't know. And it ultimately led to your parents making an inference that like you didn't care, when really, I mean, you might have cared. It was just not the stuff. It wasn't homework that you cared about. It was other stuff.
Well, it was just, it just wouldn't, I just couldn't focus. I had an above average IQ, but I couldn't put it to pen to paper. And it was very rough. And I would try to circumnavigate. I would forge signatures. I would do everything I could.
Yeah. As we would. Would you ever were you in band growing up?
No.
I would always, like, we were supposed to practice. I was always last chair trumpet because I never practiced and I wasn't very good. And we had practice cards that we had to practice like set amounts of time. But in my parents' defense, a trumpet is an abrasive instrument. Like you have no business practicing that in a house. That the moment my dad found out that mutes, like really popular, they would play with mute in and out. Yeah. But they would also you can also plug your horn when you want to achieve a certain sound. And my dad, once we discovered one of those, he was like, yeah, you should just play with a mute all the time because it takes it way down. But I would never practice ever. I wouldn't even bring my instrument home half the time, which is how the band director knew I was usually forging my practice cards. And just because my dad's initial signature is exactly like mine. Like in fact, I probably learned how to sign just the SJ signature from his sign-offs, and that's what I use now. I just duplicated his. I didn't create my own. So I just forged signatures and didn't practice and got last chair almost by choice because I was also really good friends with the first chair baritone saxophone player, and we wanted to sit together. So I would botch each chair test on purpose, and he would do really well, and we would always sit together.
You should write down the trumpet is an abrasive instrument. I feel like that's probably got potential.
I haven't even thought about talking about how I used to play the trumpet. I think it is. Yeah, it's
as an Iranian person, that's the most American musical. I got the most American musical instrument band that I could.
Yeah. Well, I missed percussion tryouts. I really wanted to play like the, marimbas, or I wanted to be in the percussion section or in the drum pit. I didn't want to play trumpet, but I literally was on the basketball court shooting hoops, and I looked down at my clock and realized what day it was, and I was like, I didn't even tell my parents so I didn't have a ride or anything. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to be in percussion.
Yeah.
So
I just thought of that. I was like, what's the most American instrument? The trumpet.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. I think I still remember how to play. And I say that I was bad. I don't think I was, because I was always in the, every year in sixth grade, at least for was in my school, it's like in sixth grade, you're in just trumpet class. And then in seventh and eighth, they put you in band, but there was usually something to the tune of symphonic band, which was all the kids who could actually play instruments. And then concert 1, concert 2. And concert 2 was they were playing literally in eighth grade, 3 years into playing the instrument, they were playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I was always in symphonic band. So I was always in the highest band, but last chair.
Yeah. My grandfather loved music, so he'd make me practice, and I would just lie and just doodle around on the piano in front of him, while he passed out drunk.
Can you play piano? You can't play, can't you?
No, it sounds like I can, but
yeah. You know who can play, and I've heard is really good, is Tony Campion. He's been playing since he was 9 or some shit.
Fucking precious.
Yeah. And it's also, dude, I love finding out hidden shit like that about people who especially people who I don't know what all they do, and I only see their like stand up and like bar life where I'm oftentimes just like, yo, buddy, come on, man, you gotta like not drink so much and like get your shit together. But then when they'll like blindside me with like, oh yeah, I do ballet, and I was like, I competed and was like a national champion or something. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, you used to do what now?
I want Sam Brand to pick up, because he said he played harmonica in the blues bands when he was in Mississippi, and so he played harmonica.
Ooh.
And I'm like, I'm down, because he said he was called the Tupelo Kid. Like they call him the Tupelo Kid in the blues bands, like Muddy Waters' son.
No shit.
Put him up in a juke joint and stuff like that. And I'm like, that I have to see. I have to see.
Yeah.
Because he had stage fright, and he talked about like having a few drinks or something before he would go on stage and perform. I'm like, okay. I was like, I got to see this Tupelo Kid. I got to see this.
Yeah,
blues.
man.
So I always call him the Tupelo Kid whenever I see him.
Yeah, I always try to poke and prod and find out what kind of hidden talents. A lot of people hold their cards tight to their chest, but like, man, is it fun when you can find out like the random person over here was like, you know, a world-class swimmer. Like, who's it? Joey Johnson was like, I can't remember if he played JUCO or if he was just a high school stud baseball player. You never really think of that with him now. I mean, the dude's like sleeved out, long hair, like dresses like he's in, you know, the Sex Pistols, like, you know, very, very different style than what you would think like a potential collegiate athlete pitcher was. Not to say that he doesn't look or seem athletic, but like when he told me that, he was just like, yeah, you know, I pitched, I was pretty good. I had about this mile an hour fastball. You know, I was like entertaining the ideas of these colleges, and then I, you know, fucked my arm up. It's always a story where like an injury in those cases, but it's always fun to hear about that kind of stuff with people. I love hearing those hidden gem stories.
Yeah, Scott Crisp is a college baseball pitcher.
Yeah, I knew that about him. Yeah, he's an athlete. Who's it? Tyler Elliott's run like a shit ton of marathons, which, you know, he's lost a ton of weight, but also when he was a little bit bigger, he was like just running nonstop. Dude was just an animal. Yeah, just all kinds of crazy shit. But finding out what people do for their job is oftentimes really interesting for me.
Yeah.
So
tell me about your fear. Like, where did your fear of disappointing people you love come from for you?
I think it's like largely based on comparing. I think anytime you like, you're an only child. I have a sister who was academically better off than I was. I think we both shook out to be pretty good people. She just always achieved more in school, and you know, she met a good guy, got married, you know, obviously first, but she's also the oldest out of all of us. When I say all of us, I mean there's a principal group of four of us. There's me, my sister, and then my two cousins who we're very close with on my mom's side. So my mom's brother lives here, and we're really close with those two cousins. So we always kind of saw each other as like a quad of children. And so she was like, she, you know, married a great dude, started having kids. That she lived up in New York for a little while, worked at the Central Park Zoo, got her master's. Like she kind of achieved all these milestones that I was so far behind. So it was, and honestly never matched up. Like, but what I've kind of come to find out later, and this is like just by way of, you know, mental gymnastics and, you know, assigning some self-worth to myself as well. That's where this disappointment probably rooted from, being like, you know, I'm not as good as this side, or I'm not as good as that person. So it's always comparing to someone better than me. And then for me, finding out that, you know, I do have a little bit of self-worth is like, you know, getting into things like comedy, or, you know, getting pretty good at like sales and stuff like that. Like I had other things that I was good at. She and I just have different, you know, I always say that like the two of us, you know, my sister and I could complement each other in a pretty distinct way, because she has a lot of like organizational and like book knowledge, which I do to some extent too, but I also have like the flip side of like kind of the dark underbelly of things knowledge. I know a little bit more about stuff that could potentially, I have friends in low places. I came up doing dumb shit. I've been arrested twice, put in jail a handful of times. Like we have different knowledge bases. So the two of us together know a lot about a wide array of things.
So do you feel like your sister was competing with you, like subconsciously, like she felt like maybe she had to succeed because you were the baby? And
Nope. I think she had me by a country mile, and she knew it. She didn't really. She and I were far enough apart in age to where like it wasn't ever direct competition, but it was always just like, you know, You see her succeeding at something, and then you feel compelled to do the same. But like you, I just had like a block. Like I wouldn't do certain things because they wouldn't interest me. School never really particularly interested me. I just knew it was something I had to do. Hindsight, I wish I didn't go directly into college. But I'm glad I did, because I don't know that I would have ever done it years later. So like, It's good to, I think college was good for the purpose of, I think college really proves one point. Unless you're trying to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer, something that requires the degree, I think going to college and majoring in whatever the other majors are just proves that you can sit still for 4 years.
Yeah.
Like you have the discipline to not fuck off for 4 years, and you're capable of turning in assignments and retaining information enough in probably the most bumfuck crazy time of your life. You're like 18 to 21 when you're an absolute moron. If you can kind of keep your shoes tied during that time, you're good to go.
Yeah, that's one thing too with college is like know what you want, because if it also like you have to sit there and think you're going 4 years in debt. So you're doing this. Yeah. You're paying for something with no money coming in because it takes all of your time.
Yeah. It's the weirdest job. It's the weirdest basically job ever. Like you're devoting 8+ hours a day to it, plus any student activities or any sports that you're in. Collegiate athletes are like people involved in extracurriculars. And then you're paying out the ass for it constantly. You're paying several $1,000s a semester, and you're not making any money. And for those of the people, like my sister got scholarships and stuff like that to a lot of stuff because she had great grades, but not me, dude. I started out in a junior college, and I had to absolutely bust my ass to prove a GPA to get into A&M. I actually only got 1 B. I went to Blinn over in like Bryan, College Station area, and I got 1 B in one class, and it was because I did well on the test. The teacher didn't like me and told me he was going to give me a B because he thought I was like a haughty asshole or some shit like that. For all intents and purposes, scored. Yeah. He was the biggest dick I've ever, because it was like I can't remember if it was anthropology or sociology, but I would just mouth off constantly because he was very like narrow-minded. And I wasn't really like woke. And this was back in like before wokeness was being cool. And I was just kind of like, what you're saying is kind of like not exact. Like you're kind of like drawing conclusions from like one narrow viewpoint. And I feel like it's a little bit more broad than that. And he's like, who's teaching the class here? And I'm like, I honestly probably could better than you. Like,
well, maybe that didn't help either. But
none of that shit helped. I showed up to class every day. He hated when I did because he knew he was going to get an earful from me.
So how does disappointing, like, how has that shaped you? I guess having a sister that basically was when your parents would come to you with things that they were disappointed, like, why can't you be more like? Yeah.
So I think my parents did a really good job of not saying that explicitly, but I think it was always implied in the back of my head. I think they knew better than to be like, your sister's better than you outright. I think any parent who does do that is really kind of screwing the pooch, but they were very, I could tell that, they were proud of what she did, and they didn't really like, I caught more heat for stuff that was not really necessarily an issue for her. So it was more like extra attention had to be paid on me. And I still sometimes to this day feel that way. Like almost feel like I'm a little bit of a liability sometimes. I know I'm not. And I've assigned a lot more self-worth to myself now, but you get put away twice, you get arrested, you fuck off and get drunk and do all these drugs and get caught doing all of them and everything by your mom. And, the whole gamut. My dad finds out about this, that, and the other. And then you always kind of feel like, even at the age of, 30, 35, as I'm getting up there, I still feel like they sometimes are like, okay, like my dad will still tell me every Friday evening, like, be careful this weekend, as if I'm like in my mid-20s and I'm like going out in downtown Denton or some shit like that. Like, I don't live that life anymore, but it's like programmed in his head to where like Shahyan is going, it's a possibility that Shahyan could get strike 3 and get arrested tonight and go down for a felony. Like, it's a possibility that he could kill himself or hurt someone else or take the wrong cocktail of drugs and end up dead or something like that. Like, it's a plausible thought because they've already lived it. Yeah. So I can't really fault them for that. I just have to do everything I can to reassure them and just completely about face course on all that stuff. I have to say, this isn't something you need to worry about. It takes years of convincing, years. When you fuck up twice, you got to make up for it over and over and over.
Double. It's double now because it's
And
you may have had them almost okay, and then the second strike kind of eliminates any work you did on the first one.
And it compounds.
Yeah.
It makes, for as much trust as you lost in the first one, you lose threefold on the next. And it's almost to the point where I think it almost got to the point where my mom, I could tell that she was like almost kind of done being like, I knew she was always going to love me and be social and like be invested in my interests. But like, I think there was a point to where it was going to be like, I can't emotionally buy in too much because if something bad happens, like the family's going to be shattered. I think I towed that line pretty good, but I had to do a lot of proving otherwise to make sure that didn't happen.
Probably still to this day, probably still some, like, cause I'm sure if you had any kind of alcoholic beverage in front of them, like the eyes would,
I seldom drink in front of them.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Don't really. Yeah.
Because I feel like if they even saw you like a sip of wine or anything, like that's like, oh, here we go, how many glasses is it going to end up being? Or
yeah. It's interesting. My dad now is like a lot more open to offering me like a drink or wine or something like that. I was like right around the time of the arrests, like it was like, no, everyone else can have it, but we're going to keep it on a shelf just out of Cheyon's reach. But like for thereafter, I think he's more of I think it's been several years, and you're right about piggybacking because mine I had just gotten off probation for the first one when I got the second one. And when I say just gotten off, I mean like a couple of weeks. No, a couple of weeks. Like I was done. I officially did not have to report anymore. I did not have to do any mailers. I owed no money to no courts, and then right back into the system.
Did you get the same probation officer?
No, because I got it in two different counties. I got both of them moved to Dallas anyway because I lived in Dallas at the time. So, and that was kind of by design based on the second attorney or by the first attorney, because he was like, if you can get your stuff moved to the county you live in, and you live in Dallas County, that's more advantageous for you, because if you can think of how much shit goes on in Dallas and how many people are on papers for a litany of things, like they care the least about drunk driving and they are really like hands off with you. It's like all the red folders would call them. It's the aggressives, the people who got caught hitting someone or assaults, or they're post jail assault cases, or they've aggravated, intoxicated, vehicular, whatever. Like they were just the bad ones. You always knew that where they were in the probation office, because that'd be failing drug tests and yelling at their POs.
I learned while I was on probation, because when I started stand up, I was on probation for DUI. So I had just gotten my breathalyzer in my car maybe 3 weeks, like after I started stand up. And it was like, no, I take that back. It was in March. So I had it from August 2006 to March 2007. And I was able to master, like I was able to drink one drink an hour before I started my car. So if I had a drink, I had to wait an hour and drink water. I would still pass.
Yeah. You learn the systems.
Yeah. And it was just, was it
good.
Probably the best behavior? No, but it taught me how to pace myself every night now, so that I would, I don't go more than 3 over the course of an open mic. And so I try to, it teaches you moderation, because I can't get negative. I can't have something have my probation. Like I lost everything right as I got my DUI. So I basically had a mental breakdown in my probation officer's, desk, because I lost my job. I was moving back home, so I was going to have to live in Hearst and drive all the way to Louisville to the Denton County probation office.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing in your car, like it. Yeah. It was, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Had to go every month. Have to go every month to Smart Start over in Irving.
Same. I got mine through them on the second one.
Yeah. And so I had to go through them every week, and
$70 a month to calibrate. all that shit. Yeah. It was a fucking nightmare. I wouldn't put that on my worst enemy. That shit sucked ass.
Well, I broke one, I think, because it just wouldn't respond, and I just beat it against my steering wheel until it wouldn't work. And so And so then I was like, I don't know what happened to this one. I was like, I don't know either. I think it just was like, I guess maybe I dropped it in the car or something and it hit, like, because I just said, I grabbed it and the cord snapped back and it hit the other side. And I guess he's like, because it seems like it's just been, it just got hit and all the calibrations got moved inside. I was like, oh, don't know how that happened.
That's weird. I don't know. That's so strange.
But yeah, I had to have my uncle pick me up, and then I just took the receiver into Smart Start the next day and then got a new one.
Yeah. Did you have the camera on yours as well? Was there like a camera on so several years later, they would inevitably find out that people were gaming the system by having someone else blow to start the car, and they would be having had drinks and stuff like that. So they would go out with their friend who was sober, and so they installed for me the small little like dash cam that was like, it kind of ran through the side panel. The wires would be plugged into the power system there, and they would come through, and it was just a camera that when the thing would beep to blow, the camera light would turn on. So it would basically take like a very short snapshot or like really quick video of who was blowing in the thing, so they could tell if you like were to change hands or something like that. So that was invasive.
One of the bartenders at Hyena's Dallas, the first bartender, Tara, she doesn't work there anymore. She married my friend Dan, and she used to have she had a air mattress, an inflator in the back of the car, because it would do the compressor would do that, so it would mimic the hum, and so she
would that work?
Yeah, she had it to work.
Holy shit,
it was amazing.
That's so smart. That's so smart. I think of any con anytime I can, and that is brilliant. And it's the perfect, if it's the air mattress thing, it's like a little pump with a little hole, just like a mouth. You just cup it to make sure no air escapes. Yeah. That's perfect, dude. Yeah, because the hum is, they want to make sure that it's not like you blowing specifically something like that into it. Man, that's so smart. Yeah. I only got the entire time I had that deep lung device, I only violated once, and it was because I absentmindedly did a swig of Listerine and was like in a rush to get to work. So I like ran out the house. I knew how to like plan out my morning. So I'd like brush my teeth and, floss and do mouthwash first thing. So then I'd shower, chill for a minute, and it would be out of my mouth by the time I'd drink water and stuff. But I violated it. It was like a flagrant violation. It was like 0.9, or it was like way above anything. And I went back, it was like 0.15 or something. I was like, oh God. And I ran inside, washed my mouth out real quick. And from then on, I always kept a bottle of water in my car for this very reason, in case I ate something that had like sugar alcohols in it and would get registered. And I switched my mouth out, came back before the timer went up again, blew again, and it was zeros. And my probation officer was like, he just pointed to it and he just goes, Listerine. And I go, yeah.
Yeah. I applaud I don't know what happened, because I'm very fortunate on my first DUI. It did not get put on my driving record. It's on my criminal record, but it's not on my driving record. So I never had the increase in insurance. I've never had the points.
Interesting.
I never had the points on my license, so I never had to pay the surcharge. Because I was freaking out. Like, I would call the DMV every time my license kept for renewal and ask if my license was suspended, because my big fear was I would get pulled over for a red light or something, and the cop would run my license and say it's suspended. I was
always checking mine. Yeah. Same.
Step out of the car, sir. And so I'd say like in 2010, like I had to get my driving record for something, I guess for my, I had a speeding ticket, and you have to now print out you have to pay the county to get your driving record for like adjudication. And I was just curious. I'm like, okay. And I noticed like it doesn't have like a DUI on there.
Yeah.
But when I pull my criminal record, it's there. Like I have my mugshot. I have my mugshot and everything on my phone somewhere. Like I have my mugshot from 2006. I was partying with Vinny Paul, Pantera. And
I have mine as well. Mine just stopped showing up like in the past couple of years. When you Google my name, it used to be like one of the first like 5 or 6 images that show up. Yeah,
that's what mine was like. I was looking at comedy stuff. I was like, you could Google yourself as a comic, and I was like, it was like 2011, and here I am like mugshots.com. I'm like, I'm like, who took the time to take my picture out of the database and put it on like mugshots, this mugshot website?
I feel like, yeah, someone has a lot of time on their hands and does that.
But what does that serve? I don't know what mugshots.com, like, oh, am I somewhere like lying about my criminal activity just to make sure that?
Yeah. I think people, they literally think that this information needs to be compiled somewhere and someone's got a lot of spare time. Or maybe it's like some sort of like CODIS database or something like that.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you it's on file somewhere. I mean, we're on the grid officially, both of us. I mean, if you've been in the system.
Yeah.
And when cops pull you over, they'll see that kind of stuff. And that's every time I get pulled over now, it could be for any mundane, rolling a stop sign, anything. Midday, I will always get asked if I've been drinking. Always. 100% of the time. And it can be, I can be the most polite person and they'll be like, hey, we ran your record. Have you had anything to drink today? And I'm like, it's 1:30 on a Tuesday. I'm clearly driving back from lunch, which, I mean, honestly, I could be drinking during, but.
As much as I'd like to, unfortunately, no.
yeah. I have to. Have you been drinking, sir? Like, I always want to flip it back on that.
I've just never put myself in that situation again, and I'll be real honest with the policeman, and that's usually what's my saving grace. And like my sobriety test, that's real. Like that, me pretending to be deaf to get out of a DUI did happen. That happened in Euless, and I'm thankful that my mom at the time lived in Euless, and that's where I eventually ended up when everything was taken from me a year or two later. I was just pretending to be deaf in this parking lot right off of 183 and not Collins, but 157 Industrial. And so I was just in that big parking lot, and I was just pretending to be deaf. Like I was like, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. And just
that's wild.
And that's literally because I was so drunk and I panicked and I just dropped my guard and said, "You have a good night." And he go, "You too." He's like, "Step out of the car, sir." And
that's so funny.
And
I thought that was like embellished a little bit. I didn't realize that was like
it's embellished a little bit that I do know a little bit of sign language. Like I know hearing closed, and so I know how to say basically I'm deaf, but I don't know much else. And so I was just panicking, and like the fear was real, so I could totally cry and everything. And I was just like, I had just gotten away, and I go, "You too, officer." And then he's like, "Sir, we need you to step out of the car."
That's hilarious.
And he literally, if my mom didn't live 2 blocks away, he's like, if you can get someone, he's like, I'm not going to take you to jail right now unless you can get someone down here in the next 20 minutes to pick you up. I will let you go. And I called my mom, and she was, he drove away, and I'm like, take me back to my car. That's the kind of drunk I was. Like, just take me back to my car. I can make it home now. And she was like,
oh, no. God.
She was like,
yeah.
Like, he's gone. Correct. What is he going to do? I was like, what's he going to do? See me get in my car? Like, I've had cops. I've had cops because we were looking for something, and they were looking for somebody else, and we went to a Jack in the Box, and it was closed. And so they pulled us over, and we're like, yeah, we're just going here to Whataburger to get food because we were doing vandal stuff. And the cops were like, we've had a lot of reports of, you kind of fit the, profile going through the parking lot. Yeah, we were going to Jack in the Box, but it was closed. So we kind of went through the parking lot and decided we were going to go to Whataburger. And they sat there and waited for us to go through the Whataburger drive-through.
Yeah. So for you to get your food and to arrest. Dude, I've always wondered why cops don't just sit outside of Jack in the Box on like Friday, Saturday nights and just feel like, boop, boop,
that's what I
step out of the car. Boop, boop, step out of the car.
Because I've had one behind me. I kind of do this story sometimes as I was at Taco Bell here in Irving, and the cops pulled up behind me. Like literally while I'm ordering, and I'm like, that's the clearest, most concise order I've ever given. Like, I will have 2 tacos. Like, I was enunciating everywhere, and I didn't want any slur, no list.
And you didn't order any. You didn't order like a smorgasbord of stuff. You were just like, I would like 2 tacos and a diet soda, and then that's it. And then you're gonna be like, in your head, you're like, oh man, I'm still gonna be so hungry.
It's just survival instinct. My adrenaline kicks in on a lot of those. Like, I've gone through so many sobriety tests. I've passed like 8. Like
Jesus.
I've been.
You got to stop drinking and driving.
Well, this was before. Like this is all before I did stand up, and so I mean, like this was me when I was at my worst. Like I was with my friends. I was my best friends in high school. We all lived together. We would party every night. So my routine, instead of doing open mics, we go to dance clubs. So we'd be from Wednesday to Sunday night. We'd be out at dance clubs, just partying it up, drinking hundreds of dollars of shots after shots. Everybody was buying rounds. We would get so wasted, and then I'd be like, let's go. And then I would drive home. Like I broke my nose like 3 times. Jesus. Probably like just passing out on the dance floor and just collapsing face first. And we were pulled over quite a few times, and I just literally was able to talk my way out of it.
Was that rock bottom for you?
Rock bottom was rock bottom was getting arrested for the DWI, and then I got in late February, March, I got all that. Then I guess in May, I got let go from my job where I was getting paid decent money for just an out moment, where a moment I just lost my cool, and I disabled the TV station, kind of, or well, their commercial. Well, so what I did was I delivered commercials to a TV station. So we had a satellite box where commercial companies would send us the commercials. We would make sure the commercial looks good. Then we would send it out by satellite to the TV stations. And so I was verifying commercials got to the TV station. The TV station kept kicking me out of the box. And so I rebooted after about 5 or 6 times, I just rebooted the box.
Yeah.
And it was a station in Los Angeles, and they were none pleased.
And they could run it right back to you.
Yeah.
They knew it was.
They knew who it was, and manager says, I have to let you go because the station's just they're just not accepting that, you're sorry or whatever. That
they're not accepting that you're sorry.
Well, they wanted more punishment than a reprimand. And then
okay. They wanted someone to lose their job over that.
Yeah. And so I was the one that lost their job, and that's when I started stand up, because I was like, okay, I've got to, this is like a sign that I should try to go for stand up. And so
wait, how was that your sign?
Just because I'd work nights. That shift would be 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It would be 6 to 3:30 a.m. 6 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. And then Saturday I would come in at midnight and not leave till 10 in the morning. And so, there was no way you could do stand up. Yeah, I was making money. I was enough to support me and my best friends, because my best friends sometimes wouldn't pay rent. And so that was everything. And that was, it was paying for everything and all my bad habits. And that's basically like that DUI kind of wrecked everything. And so I was fired. I wasn't able to drive because you don't have a license. You got a provisional license that allows you to go from work to home. And if you're, God forbid, if you're out with it any other time.
At night. You can't drive at night. Yeah, your stuff is like over after 7 p.m. You have to be home. I had one of those. Yeah.
And so I was, just sitting in my house trying to find jobs and everything. And I did tech support for a copier company where I would run out and do software, because they were selling stuff that we couldn't provide. So our sales leader basically lied to all these companies, and I would be the guy that would go out there and pretend to do work.
God damn, yeah. That's like the story.
Yeah, so
sales. Always overselling.
Yeah, and so I would just be there trying to pretend like this is going to work, and it was a online document storage and stuff, and like it kind of worked, but it never worked the way they wanted it to. And so the company...
It was like precursor to like cloud storage?
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
And the company went bankrupt, and like a couple of my checks didn't got returned. and so they had to pay me like out of the CEO, but I was never able to file unemployment. I lost that, and I couldn't find a job again until I moved back home with my parents, and I found the job that I was doing test calls with Verizon for like, because I did customer service calls and stuff, and I would I had to go to India for a couple of days to check and make sure the Senate call center.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy.
Pune, Hyderabad, and New Delhi.
Did you like it out there?
It was very interesting. Like you learn a lot more about your life and how people say, we work people to the bone. It's like you have no idea until you're seeing, until you're seeing like, Indian men on rope ladders with their looping their legs around the rope, hanging upside down, like building skyscrapers, and like there's no safety. There's no safety that they like we have here. Like like they don't have. Like you see the picture of people in the 20s sitting on beams eating lunch, like at skyscrapers. I'm like, these people are on rope. Like they're just literally hanging.
Yeah. We have no concept of what hard work is.
Yeah.
I feel like
it was insane. And so you just have a greater appreciation, I guess, for life as you have it.
Yeah, I agree.
And so
have you had to go back since?
No,
do you have to like make
that? I got fired from that, or I got let go. It was a temporary project, and I was the only one that had to go in because I didn't have the ability to do the work from home because their other two people could. And so I had to go into work, and one of the managers didn't like me in that work. And so she complained to that manager, and then they started saying, what's the validity of this program where you make test calls and stuff to the customer service center to make sure they do courtesy and stuff like that. And so that job basically got, I guess, removed.
Dissolved. Yeah.
And so I came in very uncaring. Like I had a t-shirt on, jeans, and I was like, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, who can blame you? I mean,
yeah. And so I did I had just interviewed for the job I have now, and I wasn't sure if I had gotten it. The manager of that temp company loved me. Like she's like, you've tested the highest of anybody so far. Like you were off the charts good at this. And so I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to, possibly get this contract job because it paid more than where I was at. But I was like, it was a real easy job what I was doing. It was super easy, and I was like, been paid $13 to make 5 calls to the call center and just make sure that they resolve my issue.
Yeah.
And
so you're just making test calls. You were just like, kind of like QC, quality control type thing.
Yeah, and then I would, I went over there just to kind of, just to make sure that they were teaching that. Like that's the only thing is I made sure that they were training them to do that was in the training material. And so that's why it was only a couple of days, and then I was off to the next one just to make sure. I was like, okay, look at your training materials. Yeah, courtesy words, customer service, to try to sound as non-out of country as possible. Paul Verghese used to have a great bit about it. He's like, now they have like the sports teams come up. He's like, if you're in Carolina, he's like, an Indian guy would be like, hey, so how are those Panthers? He's like, you've got real Panthers.
Yeah. He goes, I think I've heard him do that
because he says Tigers.
He asked me about,
but he used to say like, if you're in Carolina, he'll be like, hey, how about those Panthers? Like, you got real Panthers.
Yeah,
we have real Panthers. Ours are just a football team.
How
are your Panthers?
How are they killing anybody? Are you okay? Is that gonna hurt you?
But and so as literally as I was like, I had just turned in all my information, my badge and all that stuff to the person that was collecting it, because the manager I was working with got removed, and so it was somebody else. And they literally came and took my stuff, and I walked, and then my cell phone beeped, and it was the manager for the job I have now calling me saying, we have you for such and such position. Would you willing to accept? So as I walked out of the escalator, of Verizon, literally the building I could walk to now from my apartment. Like I moved here and I'm like, if I had lived here when I worked for Verizon, it was literally a walk to work.
Yeah.
And
Damn.
I was just, ever since then, I'm like, I've always been grateful. And so,
Yeah. Do you like the spot you're at now? Like,
Yeah.
It's a job that pays the bills and you're good to go?
Yeah, it pays the bills. I'm really good at it. And I enjoy, most of the work I do. Sometimes it can get a little bit frustrating just because people seem to be unwilling to try to learn, and rather just do it for me. And I get very agitated with that. I'm like, I'm here to fix it, but I'm here to enlighten you on how to keep it from breaking again, not just here to fix. I'm not your servant to fix your computer. I'm not here to complete your sale or make this app go through. I'm just telling you what needs to happen, and
Gotcha.
In the future reference, keep that on hand.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I mean, it's like, it's still kind of in the QC realm. Like you're still trying to like, you're kind of like making sure shit is working right, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just more technical. Like I can tell when something breaks. Okay, this is probably why. And this is why it's not working. And I'm very good.
And you got a lot of experience.
Yeah. And I just, since 1998. And so I've been doing this since dial-up. And, it's just certain things I've learned over the years and just little knacks. And it's amazing how much a different cable can fix things and other things like that. Just clearing stuff out fixes a lot of things.
Like routine maintenance stuff is like how you keep your tech like in line, like, moving stuff onto externals or not bogging your computer down with so many files. I see people who have like just sheets and sheets and sheets of files on like their desktop, and I'm just like, oh boy. Those are the same people that have like 1,500 unread messages in their email. Yeah. Organization, man.
So if you have kids, so say you and Katie decide, we're going to have children. Katie may have already decided for you. I don't know how that works. How do you feel like your fear of disappointment? Do you feel like that will get worse as a father?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like like now I have to be like some sort of role model for this child?
Yeah, a great question. And also, I mean, easy answer, yes. I just hope I don't shit the bed on that. Like, I'm just gonna do the best I can. I don't think I'll be a bad, like, I know I'll be a good and like very attentive parent. And I'm excited to be that, but it's like, man, there's so many things that can go wrong. But if you get bogged down with that kind of shit, if you think of every hypothetical, you're never gonna go anywhere. So it's like, that's why I like the idea of this podcast, because you're addressing fears in people that they really should actually probably be leaning into. I mean, like the fear of disappointing someone or dying, completely full of all the stuff that I wanted to create or anything like that. Those are things that I can take actionable steps to not have be the case. So I can really lean into the things that I think are, big risks and, hopefully have high rewards. And I can, lean into, maybe making sure that I keep everything in line and not disappointing people. Like those are the things that I need not fear, but actually need to kind of pay more attention to. So
yeah, I was just curious because I was like, now it's a different person, because it's like, oh, now I get to see it when I tell them no, just the look in their eyes. And
yeah. I don't know, man. I'll let you know when I get there.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll lean on your dad. Like, how did you handle telling me no? Like, what did that feel like? Was it satisfying? Because sometimes it's got to be. Sometimes it's got to be like at some point where you're frustrated with them because they keep talking. No.
Yeah. 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 Well, I do that with my nephews now. Like when they, because my mom gives them kind of whatever they want because she's a grandma and she does what the grandkids want to do. But I'm the uncle and I don't really baby them at all. They're both, the two boys are old enough to really kind of discern stuff. So the young one she's still playful, but the older ones, if I don't want to do something, I'm like, listen, man, like, no, we're not going to go talk about Plants vs. Zombies right now because I'm at the dinner table talking to, everybody else. Yeah. And I just tell them, I was like, you got to be patient. I do the things, I try to do like little bite-sized things that they should probably know sooner than later. learning things like patience and that the world does not revolve around you, and shouting my name 1,000 times is not going to get my attention any faster. In fact, it's going to delay the process, because I'm not going to sit down and have this conversation with you that you should be shouting my name 1,000 fucking times when I'm trying to do something.
You ever watch Hannibal Buress?
Oh, I mean, yeah, but which one?
The comedy Kamisato, where he talks about being an uncle.
I see that one.
Where he like gives him an Xbox. Goes, tell me one of them boring ass stories. He talks about. He's like, they just have no story. Like there's no end to the story whatsoever. It's just.
Yeah. It just goes into the next story. It just goes into the next thing they want to talk about. It's such bullshit to be a kid.
Yeah. He just says, yeah, I just get to listen to that, and then I get to go away. I get to go leave.
Yeah. Well, who's it? Was it Nick Swartzen that had a bit about like when his kids would be telling him about like Pokemon or something like that, and he didn't care, he would take them into the bathroom and start explaining all the lotions to them. It was something like that. He goes, yeah, that's me every time you start mentioning Pokemon. I'm going to tell you about moisturizers and Listerine and floss.
I did like Patton Oswalt's thing about his daughter, like My Little Ponies. Like, he's like, I'm not, I'm into Star Wars and stuff. I don't get into, he's like, I don't do that with my kids stuff. Like, I want them to have their own thing, like she's got this My Little Pony thing. And then he like goes into detail how like, he's like a super fan of all these My Little Ponies. Like, this is he just recites it all off. Like he's doing the same thing that he does with Star Wars.
Yeah. God. He's doing the thing where he like stretches the joke out really long.
But he's got all the specifics about each My Little Pony. Like if you were super like if his daughter,
that shit memorized.
Yeah, it's just so funny.
Oh, that's like kind of it's funny because it's like a charming joke because it's like it shows he really does pay attention to what she's talking about. Yeah. But God does he not give a fuck?
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a lot of that. I think being a parent is going to be a lot of me not. It's a lot of being in a relationship, honestly. I mean, I feel like sometimes you just have to kind of like nod along with something that you have no interest in, and you have to give it equal attention because you hope to get that in return. And I think a lot of people, that's where they falter in relationships. They say like, she's always talking about this or she's always talking about that. And be like, yeah, well, I mean, sometimes you're going to have to listen to that shit. Sometimes you're going to have to do shit you don't want to do. But if you want to have the same kind of thing turned around and done for you, then you got to do it. Yeah. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like,
it's just, I think it's just amazing how much you retain of that, even though it's just stuff you don't want to know. Like how much stuff, which he also has, like Patton Oswalt has a thing about like the old car jingle, like Bill 104, like it's something like that. Like he just has it in his brain and he's like, I don't know how to, why is that still there? Like my girlfriend's birthday's not there, but Bill 104. He just...
Yeah, exactly. You remember all the jingles. It's just beating in our heads, man. Ads are efficient.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for doing this, Shahyan.
Yeah, dude.
Where can people find you on social media if they want to get in shape or laugh?
Yeah, first name, last initial. So SHAHYAN, the letter J, on everything. I snagged all of them. I got on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Training, you can find me there. Message me. We'll get to work. I do private clients, but I also train over at a gym in Uptown called Trophy Fitness. So good shit. I've learned a lot though.
Is your dad also named Shahyan? Or
sorry?
Is your dad also named Shahyan? Because you said his initials are SJ.
No. My whole family is SJs. Yeah. So my sister's name is Sahar, Sahar. My mom's name, and this is a doozy. It's a famous one though. So Scheherazade, you probably heard like in old Iranian fables. Mm-hmm. And my dad's name is Siavosh, Siavosh, but he goes by Sia. But not in the restaurant. In the restaurant, he would go by Johnny. He took like a weird mafioso pseudonym because most rich white Addison elites didn't really want to learn how to say Siavosh. So
well,
he just took a different one.
You have a very similar background to Aaron Arianpour. Have you talked to him about that? Because his dad also ran a restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was...
Yep.
You had to work at the restaurant with your dad? Like, did he make you...
So his normal bartender was very Catholic, and he didn't want to work on Easter because that was like one of the most devout holidays for him and his family. So I bartended on Easter for Easter brunch. I was not of bartending age. My dad said that if any law enforcement comes around, just go sit down, and play, just sit down and like act like you're drawing or something. Just be like, yeah, I'm the owner's son or something. I'm just sitting in the lounge area waiting for him to get off work or something. He was like, get out from behind the bar. You're 16 years old. You cannot be back there. But it was a perfect day for me to bartend because all that was being ordered were Bloody Mary. It was two or three ingredient drinks. Mm-hmm. So it was Bloody Marys, mimosas. Every once in a while, he taught me how to make a gimlet and a dirty martini because he was like, a couple regulars are going to come order this shit. So like, know how to make these 3 drinks. And then mostly you're going to be pouring champagne, orange juice, or Bloody Mary mix, vodka, ice, celery, like all the easy stuff. So it was easy. And beer.
Good to know. Like you work behind the bar and
later on I did it actually for real in college, like as an actual bartender.
Put it to good use. Like it's like, okay, I learned this at 16 and carried it on.
Yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Well, we got the show tonight too in Fort Worth.
Yeah. So I'll see you tonight and have a good visit with your parents, I guess, is where you're off to next.
Yeah, I'm going to drop them off at the airport.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate you having me, man. This is fun. I like talking about this kind of stuff. This is good.
Where is your parents heading to?
Fuck, I don't know. Seattle, I think. I think they're just taking like a half-week trip somewhere. My dad's retired and my mom can work from anywhere. So
okay. Well, I hope they have a safe flight and
same.
See you tonight.
All right, buddy. I'll see you tonight. Have a good one.
So that was Shahyan. That was a very, I would say, almost heavy conversation. Like it was a very honest and telling, interview. I felt, we both kind of, I guess unloaded some things, in our life that, maybe we regret. And unfortunately, even though we regret them, they still happened and you still have to accept and move on. And that's one of the weirdest parts of kind of disappointing people is how do you make up that loss? And how do you, just have to slowly work back to where they can see that you're working on it. And, just the honest conversation about, how measured their enthusiasm was with him about certain things, and it really resonated with me. I've struggled with that before. It was something that I, my early moving out phase really didn't grasp until I had borrowed so much money from my father that I could just feel like the disappointment and just the potential of not being, I guess, good enough. I could just sense the disappointment in his voice, and I hated it. And it was sad. I didn't like to beg my father for rent money, but it's something that happened, and I have to accept that I was irresponsible, and I didn't plan ahead. I didn't have a contingency for paying my rent outside of having a paycheck. And I waited till the last minute to try to pay it. And it's frustrating. It's one of those things in life where you look back on it and you wonder, how did I get that far? But you move on and you find the good in life and you try to make things better. Shahyan just this weekend was at the House of Comedy with I think it's a Sifali. Plano House of Comedy is a new club here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and Shahyan is already making, inroads into that club as well. Wish him the best of luck. He's an amazing talent, and he's only getting better with every opportunity that he seizes. Check him out at Shahyan. It's SHAHYANJ on all social media platforms. I'll also have those in the show notes. He does personal training and fitness. That's another one of his passions. So if you're needing a personal trainer, check him out. Definitely can help you with some very unique and inspiring exercises, as well as just an all-around cool person to hang with. As for me, I did a show at the Dallas Comedy Club, and it went over very well. I hopefully will have some more future dates with that said club going forward, and hopefully at some point, I will also get in the Plano House of Comedy. I received an email from Laughs Comedy Cafe in Tucson to send them some video clips, so I have sent them, and now I wait to see if perhaps I may even be working in southern Arizona, which would be just an amazing fun time. And so I look forward to that. As far as other shows coming up, I am in Midland in December. And then January, I am back in Wichita, Kansas at the Looney Bins, as well as Oklahoma City the following weekend. If you live out in those areas and you want to come see a show, check me out. It'll be January 2nd through 6th in Wichita and 12th through the 16th in Oklahoma City. I thank you guys for listening to the Sum of All Fears podcast. Leave a review if you like what you hear. Send me an email if you don't at somefearfans@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to the Sum of All Fears podcast and have a wonderful week. And now some thank yous for the folks that make this show possible. Thanks to Barry Whitewater for my art and graphics. You can follow him on Instagram at bwhiteh2o. Get it? H2O like water. You can also follow him on Facebook Music. A huge thank you to Gunnar Olsen for the wonderful music provided for this podcast. You can follow him on Instagram at gunbuns, that's GUNBUNS, as well as his website, gunnarolsen.net. Check out some of the samples that he has recorded. They're amazing. He's an amazing percussionist. If you want to follow the show, we've got a Facebook group, Sum of All Fears. Instagram, Twitter, you can find us at Some Fear Fans. If you have some feedback for the show, email me at somefearfans, SOMEFEARFANS @gmail.com. I'll be happy to take those into consideration. Also, if you'd like to be a guest, email me at somefearfans@gmail.com. We can try to iron out some details and get that settled in. Give us some feedback if on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a review. It makes the show bigger, and it's not going anywhere. I'm going to record as many shows as I possibly can. If you want to follow me on social media, I am at Ryan Perio. It's RyanPerio on all social media platforms. You can follow me there, and you can check me out at ryanperio.com, my website. I'll try to list upcoming shows there as well. It's been kind of spotty because as soon as I set it up, that's when the pandemic happened, and everything's kind of just in a holding pattern. Thanks again for listening to the Sum of All Fears podcast. Next week, we'll have another guest with another fear. Thanks for listening.